contemplating the very largest scale things and the very smallest scale things, to me, I'm filled with awe, but sometimes I'm sort of filled with terror and horror, and I don't understand what an infinite universe could even mean, but what could a finite universe mean? So you've just spent a year or more,
2 years,
2 years thinking about this sort of stuff, and even darker, like thinking about the end of the universe. Has this, so for 2 years, has this like messed with your head? Have you, just thinking so much about the end of everything?
No, it's definitely been a head trip. I mean, there's definitely something weird about, every day in the morning I get my tea and my little oatmeal at the cafe, and I start and then the galaxies are ripped apart. That being in that headspace is a very strange thing, and especially toward the end of the book where I'm talking about where things are going next and asking people their opinions about the future of physics, the future of the universe. This is a very weird place to be. It's a very strange thing to think about, and I don't know. It has definitely affected my outlook. I mean, I think.
Do you consider yourself an optimist or pessimist? and did you have a different answer 2 years ago?
I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, it definitely makes you feel like, your little problems are not that big, right? I mean, the whole universe is going to end, right? Yeah. Like, how seriously can we take things? And that can be a little bit freeing. That can be a little bit cheering, just to think like, well, whatever we do here, we are such an insignificant thing. We can just, appreciate what we're doing and not worry too much. But it's also a little bit daunting because if the universe is going to end, even if it's going to end and so far in the future you can't really think about it, that means at some point we don't have a legacy, right? There's some point at which the consequence of our existence no longer matters, right? And that's a hard thing to wrap your head around, because even if you're okay with your own personal death, usually the reason people are okay with their own deaths is because, like, something of me will live on, maybe in my children or my works,
book I wrote, or a building I designed.
Right, yeah. And if the whole universe is going to end, that's not true anymore.
No legacy.
I mean, at some point, that's not true anymore. And for some people, that's so far in the future, it doesn't matter. But for other people, the fact that it's, infinite versus not infinite makes a difference.
But a legacy of 100 billion years is not bad.
Sure. But then at some point, it's done. So I don't know. I mean, I've definitely found talking to people that some people really did see that distinction very clearly between we go on forever and we do not go on forever. And so that was a really interesting thing to confront in this book. What does it mean that it will all end at some point? That there will be a point when none of us is remembered. None of us mattered. That's a weird thought. And so I talked to a bunch of people about this. When I was going around interviewing people about research, I was also asking them this question, like, how do you feel about the end of the universe? I asked that question to a dozen luminaries in the field, and I got a bunch of different answers. And some people were like, well, this is really sad. And other people said, actually, it's kind of freeing. It's kind of freeing, the idea that it doesn't go on forever, that we're a little blip, and we can just enjoy what we have, and it can be meaningful because it's happening now, even though it's not going to be written down in stone, in the far future. And that was a really interesting thing to come to terms with, to think about what does it mean for life to be meaningful now as a temporary thing. And yeah, I think I got a lot out of that. I think it was an interesting exercise to go through, and I think an important one, because I think we should think about it in those terms. We should think about what does it mean right now, rather than relying on like, maybe they'll talk about me in 100 years, maybe not, and if they're not going to be talking about us, how do we live our lives now so that we find it meaningful? I thought it was, it's getting a little sentimental and stuff, but I thought it was a really powerful thing to think about, and very, it really did change my outlook on life and the meaning of everything.